Macaron, Macaroon, or Macron. What is the difference? One is a coconut-based dessert that's often drizzled or dipped in chocolate. The other is the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. But today we are going to talk about the infamous, notorious French macaron. Hi guys, welcome to the Passionate Palate, a podcast for food lovers and culinary explorers where we talk about various foods, flavors, and ingredients from around the world. I am your host, Say, a passionate foodie, cooking and baking enthusiast, and former bakery owner. I am super excited today. This is my first show, and I'm so happy to talk to you about the French macaron. To make life easy, I'm going to call it Macaron. I have a love-hate relationship with this dessert, and I'm going to talk to you about the making of it, the experience of making it, what it feels like to enjoy one and make one. So let's get into it. The French macaron originated in Italy. It was brought to France in the 16th century. French macarons are delicate cookies. They're considered a bougie dessert. It's a sandwich cookie. It's made with almond flour, so it's gluten-free, and it has a soft, shiny top. It has ruffles around the cookie, and that's also called the feet of the macaron. And it's sandwiched with either buttercreams, ganaches, or jams. All three are delicious. I'm going to share a story with you. The first time I discovered a macaron was way back in 2014. Back then, it wasn't as famous as it is now. I used to run my baking business from home. I would bake for friends and family and a few customers here and there. And I used to make everything from custom cakes, brownies, cookies, s'mores bars, and other fun desserts. But I didn't quite know how to make a macaron. So the first time I tried it was at a little French cafe in the city. The pistachio macaron was one of the first I tried because I'm a pistachio girl and I like pistachio. I remember it being so delicious. So when you bite into a macaron, it has a soft crunch. And then as you're eating it, it has like a chewy center and it's soft and it's amazing. It tastes incredible. So I remember coming back home and saying, I have to try making macarons. Before I could offer it to my customers, I had to make sure that I get it right. Boy, you have no idea the struggle I went through to make macarons. I had to Google, I had to find out some methods and how to make it. And I remember the first time I made a macaron, it just was a disaster. It turned out so bad that I had to practice a few times before I got it right. One thing about me is that when it comes to food, I never give up on anything until I get it right. So after numerous times, I finally got it right. But here's the thing about macarons though. You may know the technique, you may have your ingredients and your recipe, but the weather plays a huge part in the outcome of your macarons. Your oven plays a huge part. So there are little factors which we're going to go over that can end up in a good macaron or a horrible looking macaron. But regardless, the good thing is that they're still delicious. During my maca failures, my maca wongs happened, I used to give it to my children or my husband and we used to snack on it. Super delicious. In 2017, when I opened up my bakery, my storefront, it was a macaron cafe because of the love I had for the macaron. And I remember it was so fun offering macarons to the customers. People loved it. They would come, they would choose their flavors. We made many different varieties, so many different flavors of macarons, and they all look beautiful on the display case. I used to make macarons for the seasons and the holidays. In the spring, I would do carrot cake and lemon macarons. In the summer, there would be watermelon, s'mores macaron, which was marshmallow fluff and chocolate. In the fall, we would focus on pumpkin cheesecake macaron, maple pecan. And then during Halloween, we would have the blood splatter macaron, which was a dark chocolate raspberry. And then during the holidays, we would have gingerbread, eggnog, and candy cane. So we were so famous back then for our macarons. We would have such an amazing variety of flavors. But like I always say, we still had maca disasters in the kitchen. And then what I did was when macarons used to crack and break in the oven, I would crush it and put it into ice cream, and I called it Zay's Mac Chip ice cream. It was such a hit. So it's a win-win. So now let's talk about how macarons are made. We're going to talk about the ingredients. As I said earlier, macarons are gluten-free. They're made with almond flour, which is also why macarons are slightly expensive. But sadly, not too many people understand that. When they see a macaron, they're like, oh my God, why is it so expensive? That little thing. But they don't realize the technique and the labor that goes into making them, the expense of the ingredients. The ingredients of macarons are almond flour, egg whites, powdered sugar, extracts, food powders, or food gels. The ingredients have to be measured, be the exact grams. That's how I used to make it. And then some people like to age the egg whites, where they separate the eggs and they keep it a few days in the refrigerator until it ages. That's why it's called aged egg whites. Or you could buy liquid egg whites. Either works. And to make them, there are different methods. There's a French method, Swiss, and Italian. When I was making it at home, I was making the French method, which is where you add sugar in while your egg whites are being beaten. You add sugar in stages until you get the meringue. In the Italian method, you're boiling water and sugar until it comes to a certain temperature, and then you slowly drizzle it into your egg whites, which are being whipped. And that, I feel, gives you a more stable shell. You can add the food gel at the time you're beating the egg whites, because that's what I like to do. So, for example, I was making cotton candy macarons. I would add a certain shade of blue into the egg whites. When it was pistachio, I would add green. If it was red velvet, I would add red food gel. That's the stage where I like to add the food gel. When you're beating the egg whites, there's something called the upside down method. Your meringue has to be nice and stiff so that when you hold the bowl upside down, nothing falls out. Once your meringue is ready, it's time to fold the egg whites into your dry mixture. The dry mixture is your powdered sugar and your almond flour. So when you're folding it in, it's called the macaronage, the process of folding your egg whites into your almond mixture. And we do it in about 2 to 3 stages. It takes a lot of arm work. Trust me when I say it. You have to have strong biceps and wrists when you're folding the macaron. So once it's nicely folded, texture has to be a ribbon-like stage, or like it has to flow like lava. That's what they call it. So once you fold it and you lift the spoon over your bowl, it has to fall in like a nice, steady, ribbon-like texture. That is when you know your macaron is ready. If you undermix, your macarons are going to come out bad. If you overmix, they're going to be worse. All this takes practice, time, and patience to master making macarons. Almost master, because then we have to worry about the weather and the temperature in the kitchen. I normally don't like making macarons on rainy days because of the humidity, and it just is a disaster in the kitchen on rainy days. But sometimes when you're working in a commercial kitchen, it tends to be different depending on the temperature inside the kitchen. So once your macarons folded and your batter is ready, we fill it into piping bags with like a round tip, piping tip. And some like to use a silicone baking sheet, and others use parchment paper. But sometimes it's hard to use the parchment paper inside commercial ovens because of the convection in it, because the air that blows around in the oven, it can kind of mess with the paper that flies on the corners. So you don't want that. We used to use either Teflon sheets or the silicone baking mats. When you're piping it, we hold the bag upright and then you're piping it. And I call it the flick of the wrist. So as soon as you pipe it, you got to twist your wrist to get the batter out of the bag. So when my bakers used to come in, when I used to train people, I said, you have to master the flick of the wrist so that you're piping your macaron and it comes out just like the right quantity. And now once it's piped, we need more muscle and arm work. We have to bang the trays at the bottom. So you're holding the tray like this, and you're banging at the bottom of the tray to release the air bubbles that form. Because if you don't, it's another disaster. So you got to tap the pan at the bottom, and then you'll see that the macarons are slightly spread out. The circles are slightly spread out. And then if you see that there are little holes in the macarons or little lumps, take a toothpick and then poke at those holes to release the air bubbles. Now, you just don't put it into the oven. You have to let it rest. We put the trays back on the baking racks and we time it for a good 15 to 18 minutes, depending on how the macarons dry. The surface of the macaron has to be dry and not tacky. When you're touching it, you should be able to run your finger over macaron very gently, and there should be nothing on your fingers. And that's when you know that they're ready for the oven. Now, the temperature. The temperature of your oven varies from your home kitchen to a commercial kitchen, but the temperature of your oven has to be right as well. Once you know the best temperature that works for you, you have to time it. What we like to do is rotate it halfway through. Say we time it for 18 minutes. We bake it for 9. We open up the oven doors and then we rotate it and put it back in. That I feel helps the macaron. And if you watch them closely, if you're like me and you love to watch your macarons bake and rise, you see the feet that forms around the macaron. And then once you rotate it and continue baking, they kind of go down a bit. And finally, when the time is right, you have to time your macaron, because if you forget to time the macaron, when we take it out of the oven, they're either burnt or sometimes they tend to crack. There are good macaron days and bad macaron days. There are times our macarons have come out perfect, and there are times that our macarons have cracked and broken. And like I said, we never waste it. We either snack on it or we put it into ice cream for Zay's Mac Chip ice cream. So that is the process of baking the macaron. Now we got to talk about filling them. The macarons have to cool to room temperature before you could peel it off your silicone mat or your Teflon sheets, depending on what you use. And then we place some upside down because that's going to be where your filling is. At Zay's, at my bakery, we used to make a lot of ganache-based macarons. We would do pistachio, rose water, vanilla, chocolate, and then we would make the ganache ahead of time so that it sets. It has to be of a smooth, pipeable consistency. And then when we used to do our cookie butter macaron, we would use the Swiss meringue buttercream and incorporate Trader Joe's Spookulous crunchy cookie butter. It was one of the best things in the world. And then there were times that we would use jelly when we used to make the blood splatter macarons for Halloween. We used to use chocolate ganache, dark chocolate ganache, and put fresh raspberry jam in the center. And we used to put like a red drizzle of royal icing so it looks like splatter blood. So the fillings are endless. And back in the cafe, we also made a hot Cheeto macaron. That was fun and interesting. So many wanted to try, and it was a hype. A tip for success in macaron making is never give up making macarons. It doesn't matter how many times you try, you just keep making it and you will get it right. And I do have to say, there are macaron makers out there who make macaron in every shape that you could imagine. From Pokemon macarons to Elmo to Goofy to Donald Duck to any character out there. And that's a true special talent. I don't know how they do it, but I admire those macaron makers. This brings us to the end of this episode of The Passionate Palate. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching and learning about macarons and my experiences of making macarons at my dessert shop. I hope you try making them. So if you love everything about macarons, if you love making them, you love eating them, or have some special macaron story, please share them with me in the comments. I would love to know. And hey, if you don't like macarons at all, let me know that as well. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok for some behind the scenes fun, and look out for the next episode. We're going to have something really interesting to talk about. And always remember, don't count the calories, count the delicious memories.